Welcome, I'm glad you are here. In this video, I will cover what is an organization and what makes a sport organization so very unique. Before we take off running with the content, let's get those pesky definitions sorted out. Organizations are groups of people working independently, providing specialized contributions towards a common goal. Organizational identity are the members' perceptions of who the organization is and what makes it different from other organizations. Specialization is the distribution of labor based on attributes or competencies. Departmentalization is grouping similar specialized positions to create efficient workflows. Sport is officially governed competitive physical activity where participants are intrinsically and extrinsically motivated. An organization's mission is their reason for existing. Their vision is the ambition for the future. Their values refer to the ethical underpinnings of how they will achieve their goals. Culture are shared values, deeply held assumptions, and beliefs of the organizational members, and they are reflected in rituals, ceremonies, and practices. All right, now that we went over those definitions, let's dive into how sport management got its beginnings. Now, before Los Angeles Dodgers were located in Los Angeles, they were actually located in Brooklyn, and their owner, Walter O'Malley, was just talking to some professors about how the sport product is so very unique and managing sport organizations is different than managing other businesses. So a subdiscipline that today we know as sport management was created. And when we think of sport organizations, we think sport teams, parks and recreations, governing leagues like the NFL or the NCAA. That's what may come to mind. First though, let's clarify that not every group of people is an organization. To be considered an organization, a group needs identity and permanency, instrumentality, membership, division of labor, hierarchy and authority, or hierarchy of authority, and formal policies and procedures. More specifically, to be considered an organization, a group must have a separate identity from the individuals that are in it. Also, an organization must be independent from any one individual. So when that person leaves the organization, the group remains, or the organization essence remains. So these are permanency and identity. Then there is instrumentality, or an organization's ability to achieve bigger goals than an individual would alone. And this is due to synchronicity, economies of scale, or an organization's ability to replicate successful procedures in multiple locations. There is also membership, or who gets to join, who gets to stay, and who gets to replace those who leave. For example, when you apply for a job, there are minimum job requirements posted in the job announcements, and that is to help sort out through hundreds of applicants. And once applicants are hired, there are systematic and periodic evaluations to help train, promote, relocate members, update members' knowledge based on their performance. And typically when we think of all of these, we think of employees, but it can also be useful in volunteer-based organizations. Now, organizations divide labor to create efficiencies based on workers' specialized knowledge according to the organizational goals. And this is called synchronizations. And that requires management and administrators. Ideally, these administrators will have the authority to make decisions that affect their units. And to make these decisions more equitable, they use policies and procedures. And these policies and procedures can also be used to educate new members as they join, as new rules are implemented, or to explain different tasks and outline authority. So far, organizations that are sport organizations and not sport organizations may look pretty similar to you. So let's hone in on how they're different by first defining sport as a governed competitive physical activity with extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. So sport organizations are the ones that facilitate the practice of these activities. Think about leagues, conferences, associations, governing bodies, teams, franchises, all these things, clubs, amongst others. This is maybe not the most comprehensive definition, but it is the one that is, most current, the most current working definition that we have in the field. Now, in its current state, it leaves, for example, esports out because esports is not a physical activity, and it also leaves activities like or associations like Sports for Good or Girls on the Run out because they're not inherently competitive. So keep in mind that this is an evolving field, and the definition of sport we work with today will change as the field develops tomorrow, because they're evolving or changing in parallel. And then there is the monumental task of defining which industry the economic sector we put sport in. For example, the U.S. Department of Commerce classifies sports as arts, entertainment, and recreation, and this leaves Nike and Adidas out because they are in retail and trade. So there are other enterprises too that feed into multiple categories, such as facilities, which can be real estate, or they can be arts, recreation, and entertainment. Fortunately, we can use organizational identity to classify an organization. And like we say on the definitions, an organization's identity is based on the perceptions of its members, that is, the organization's members, about who the organization is. So if the employees think the organization culture and the mission and their brand is about sports, then they in fact are a sport organization. So the organization's mission, vision, values, and structures are going to influence managers and members' behavior, shape their organizational identification, influence the actual employees' attitudes and behaviors, and the external perceptions of the organization, including who joins the new employees that come into the organization, the prospective employees. And the organization mission, like I said, is their mission for existing, or their reason for existing. The vision is their ambitions for the future. Their values refer to the ethical underpinnings of how they achieve their goals. And the culture is the agglomeration of their shared values, the deeply held assumptions and the beliefs of the organizational members. And this culture is referred in rituals and ceremonies and practices. The structure shows the division of labor and the oversight, and it also shows the patterns of communication, coordination, workflow, authority, and it's exemplified in the charts, in the organizational charts. An effective structure makes an effective organization. It helps separate those who are good at one task from those who excel at a different task. And then grouping those specialized positions is known as specialization, which can improve communication, oversight, and it also creates a hierarchy. In general, taller organizations are more structured and have more bureaucracy by nature, more red tape, and smaller organizations are going to be flatter, and they tend to have more width but less distance between upper and lower employees. And the type of the structure as well as the organizational culture are going to affect the communication as well as other facets of the organization. For example, in formal organization, communication is from the top down, and communication across departments is exclusively done through top executives. In less formal organizations, what we will tend to see is more interactivity across departments, less formal communication channels, and more flow. In smaller organizations, we will see less bureaucracy. In flatter organizations, more information flows, more informality between executives and lower level employees, and vice versa, more communication. The culture tends to be less formal because there are more frequent interactions, right? If we think strictly about the size of the organization, large sport organizations are going to attract the most attention. Think the Yankees, the Lakers, Barcelona Soccer Club. In fact, many sport managers possibly aspire to work in pro sports. And we must keep in mind, though, that sport organizations, most of them are small businesses with less than 50 employees. That's the definition of a small business. They also have limited resources and small profit margins, specifically if we only count sport management personnel and we're not counting personal trainers, athletic trainers, coaches, etc. Now to recap, small organizations are flat and they're informal. They interact frequently, and this affects the psychological contract between the employee and the organization. Now, having limited resources isn't all bad. It can create an atmosphere of creativity. On the other hand, though, it may be hard to implement all of the ideas because of those limited resources that we were just talking about. So just like sport organizations are affected by their surroundings, like the economy and the culture of their community, they also have the ability to affect the community around them. As many other organizations, sport organizations rely on local, regional, national government for support. They may be tied to the city budget, government grants, resident voting may alter their access to funds. Government support may also provide legitimacy to the organization, and more broadly, sports may be used as political symbols of progress or even discrimination because of their influence. Also, sport organizations may sway public opinion, and this can occur without even intention or action. For some organizations, their mere existence is a political statement, so keep that in mind. There's also organizations who use community outreach initiatives or their wealth to influence their community. Sport for development organizations create positive health, social, and economic changes in their communities. Likewise, sport commissions market their communities to bring events and potential tourists to their communities with the expectation of positive economic impact. Increasingly, sport organizations are using their standing to support political causes in line with their values. So to recap, today we talked about organizations, organizational identity, specialization, departmentalization, sport, mission, vision, values, and culture. This is your instructor, Dr. Benavides. I'm glad you joined me and in this discussion about sport organizations and their uniqueness.